This time.
Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America.
Meghan McCain decided to weigh in on the...
That's Meghan McCain. I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
And we are here as Middle America. We're not left wing. We're not right wing. We're just right. Good Lord. Okay. We're a free speech environment. Check us out, facebook.com/America Middle, where you can be part of the conversations. Keep in mind, it is a free speech environment, so we do let it fly. Nothing I can do about that, ladies and gents. Okay, so we've been tracking TYT. I haven't watched TYT in quite some time. And after watching this video, I remembered why. Because of the recent Jimmy Dore jihad, you know, they've been popping up in my algo.
Right.
And so this wonderful gem of a video came up. And so I just wanted to comment on it. So having said that, here's Meghan McCain. Here's, what's her name again? Ana Kasparian. Let's go.
Catholic Church's decision to vote on whether or not President Joe Biden should be offered communion due to his views on abortion. Now, on the campaign trail, Biden went from being supportive of the Hyde Amendment, which bans any federal funding for abortions, to lightening up on that view. He realized that, yeah, maybe the Hyde Amendment actually stands in the way of women who might need that procedure for health purposes, right? So he changed his view on that. The Catholic Church apparently is now getting together to vote on whether to allow Biden to get communion as a result of the abortion issue. In fact, last week, the US Conference of Catholic Bishops voted to proceed with drafting a formal statement declaring that the meaning of communion, what the meaning of communion is, and also clarifying that if a politician supports abortion rights, maybe they shouldn't be allowed to get communion. Now, Biden, of course, is a devout Catholic, so this would in fact affect him. And Meghan McCain's take on it is fascinating. Let's hear what she has to say.
Well, first of all, it's not true that the Catholic Church is voting on whether or not to make abortion this sticking point. All they're doing is coming together to create a formal statement on already settled Catholic dogma.
Right. And whether or not to give communion to Biden if he is going to push that
that
agenda.
is already Catholic dogma. Catholic official Roman
whether
Catholic.
Or not they're going to enforce it is what you're saying.
Correct.
I
but
see.
Ana doesn't know anything about that, which is partially okay. But if you're going to comment on something, at least be remotely familiar. So in Catholicism, you have venial sins and mortal sins. If you die with venial sins on your account, it's okay. You go to purgatory, you do Santa Spasio for a couple hundred years, and you end up in heaven. If you die with a mortal sin on your account, you go to hell. And you don't get purgatory. And when you commit a mortal sin, you are disqualified from communion, which in Roman Catholic theology is the full body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. You are barred from communion if you commit a mortal sin until a priest gives you the absolution so that you can go back into full fellowship with God in the See of Peter. Okay? That's what they believe. They've always believed that. They've always treated mortal sins that way. However, as with anything, the Catholic Church, especially since Vatican II, has become more and more liberal and has not been enforcing its already standing laws. And so Biden is so pro-abortion that there is a contingency, and I've been following it because I've got a friend that's in the middle of all of this. MS is in the middle of the whole thing, so
Really?
He and I talk all the time. Yeah, and he's a quasi-famous published author, Catholic guy. So I know this stuff not because I'm super educated in Catholicism, it's because I have a front row seat on it. But the Catholic Church is not voting on something new. And by the way, when she says the Hyde Amendment and federal dollars, please understand what she's talking about. What she's talking about is the government taking my hard-earned money to fund the killing of the life of children, and I disagree with it. And so Biden knew that that was a massively unpopular statute. And so because of it, he lied during the campaign trail, surprise, surprise, because a lot of people were saying, hey, telling a girl she can get an abortion is one thing, but forcing a taxpayer to pay for it is another thing. So he even had left-wing support. Yeah. And so it was too risky of an issue, and so he just lied and said he wasn't for it. Then obviously once he got power, he did. And so in light of that, the Catholic Church is saying, okay, well, we're going to see if we're going to actually enforce our policies and procedures here. I wish they would have done that during slavery.
Yeah.
We continue.
If you are a devout Catholic, as President Biden claims to be, abortion is a cardinal sin that can do deep spiritual harm to you. And President Biden had been supporting.
That's an indisputable fact. It's just an indisputable fact. That's not something that's debatable. It's not something that is even in question. That's an indisputable fact. It's a mortal sin in Roman Catholicism. So she's right there. I'm waiting for Meghan to get toxic here.
Of the Hyde Amendment up until 2019 when he decided to run for president. And the Hyde Amendment means that the government would provide federal funding for abortion or wouldn't. And now he is for it. And he has shown in this upcoming budget that he is for it. And I think that sort of has been the threshold. I remember when it happened, having a conversation with a friend of mine who was close to him saying, for me, this is a deep paradigm shift for how I view President Biden. Because if he's for the federal funding of abortion, and I know the women on this show disagree with me, but as far as I'm concerned, abortion is murder, and that means the government funding of killing of the unborn.
So she now believes that abortion is murder. That wasn't always her take. It was certainly different when I knew her and spoke to her about the topic.
Who cares? People evolve.
When did they put this video out?
Just now. I mean,
wait.
An hour ago.
So after Jimmy puts out this video of all the stuff that she was saying, the trash she was saying about women in the past.
They didn't address it.
And that but you can't just go in your next video and start making it look like, well, you know, she didn't have this stand back then when I knew her. Well, you want us to judge things that way?
Yeah.
Should we also judge you and say that you haven't changed?
Yeah, but I mean, the consistency and things of that nature, what can you do? What can you do? We continue. Unbelievable. But you're right. I mean, she's unbelievably inconsistent, but what can you do?
But now she thinks it's a giant sin, and
yeah, most people believe that killing innocent human beings is a giant sin. Most people believe that, not just Christians.
Joe Biden shouldn't be able to get communion as a result of his take on. We're supposed to live in a country that separates church and state.
Now this, I'm completely confused by. What we're talking about is the Establishment Clause. But what does the Establishment Clause have to do with the See of Peter, Anna? Like, there's no correlation whatsoever to the Establishment Clause here. But she's gonna say, you know, her stuff, and then go ahead. You look.
No, you can keep going. I want to see more before I make more comments.
Why?
Because I want to get where she's going with this. Like, obviously, I think that I'm actually glad that the Catholic Church is going to do something, or potentially going to do something. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, especially because he was so dishonest about it.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. We continue.
So Biden has his own personal views on abortion. And guess what? In a country that separates church and state, he has the right to his religious liberty, his religious beliefs. If he doesn't want his, if he doesn't want to support abortion personally, he has every right to not.
Yeah, but the issue is he's part of an organization where the hierarchy structure does not allow for freedom of conscience. It's actually declared a heresy during the Counter-Reformation at the Council of Trent, which is why the Establishment Clause came about in the first place. But let's not do any history. Let's not think about any context. Let's just get triggered by the fact that the Roman Catholic Church is actually being consistent with its own ideals. Unbelievable stuff.
Support it personally, but as the president of the United States, as the leader of the state, he doesn't get to inject his religious views or have his religious views dictate the lives of ordinary citizens.
What the hell? But we should be dictated by what the government is going to take our money and it's going to go fund abortions. So that's okay?
Correct. This is the inconsistency that happens, not just with people like Ana, but most modern secularists when they say things like, you can't impose your value structure onto us, not realizing that every form of law is an imposition of a certain collection of moral statutes. That's why we have prisons. People are being kept in prisons against their will because we impose on them our moral aversion to bank robbery. I live in the child molesting capital of the planet, Ana. I'm happy that the government imposes our morality onto those people. I'm also grateful to God that the North imposed their value structure onto the South. Although people that held to your worldview currently, Ana, did not help in that endeavor. We continue.
It's literally against what the Constitution stands for, right? So like that's the
No, the Constitution has no bearing as to whether or not the Roman Catholic Church has to redefine what a mortal sin is and how they're going to handle it, Ana. The Constitution has zero jurisdiction over the See of Peter. Like zero. It's the equivalent to when we invaded Iraq. I think it was, who was the guy after JP2? I think JP2, when we invaded Iraq, JP2 condemned Bush. And Bush was like, I mean, okay, that's fine. We're America. We've got laws, right? Like, so this is the equivalent of that. She's freaking out because the Catholic Church has the audacity to do it. Currently, there is no violation of the Establishment Clause currently. We continue.
The thing that I don't get about right-wingers in this country and people who at least pretend to be against abortion when privately they're actually in favor of abortion, like
I don't know what the point of making that statement is. Is she saying that all of us really secretly are pro killing babies?
That's what it seemed like she was saying.
But the only thing that I could agree with her on is maybe she's talking about religious people that say they're against abortion, but then will, participate in killing their own grandchildren because they don't want to be embarrassed or something like that. We've certainly seen that with our own two eyes.
Yeah.
But that's not the entire pro-life movement. We continue.
Want to support the Constitution, cherry pick parts of the Constitution that they like, right? The Second Amendment, they love the Second Amendment. They love the First Amendment, but only sometimes, only when it comes to protecting their speech, but not the speech of others. When it comes to the separation of church and state, I mean, they just completely reject that as if it doesn't even exist. That is part of what this country is. We are supposed to have that separation. So again, if you want.
What does that have to do with what just happened here? What constitutional violation is happening here, Ana? The Catholic Church has the right to say, here is our long-standing opinion on killing innocent children.
Wasn't the separation of church and state something totally different than the way people say?
Well, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about the Establishment Clause in a second, because unfortunately, this is something that gets trotted out by secularists who are extremely ignorant of how our country came together. This idea that the founding fathers were trying to create some secularist utopia is absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely insane, and it's complete revisionist history. So we continue.
To have a baby if you get pregnant, you don't want to get an abortion, you have every right. You want to fend off birth control, you think that that's sinful due to your religious beliefs, awesome, you get that right. But why do they think that those beliefs need to be forced on everyone else?
Because, Ana, in the same way that you believe that abortion is a morally positive thing because it's something a woman gets to do with her body, which is obviously logically fallacious on its face. In the same way that you have that belief that you have then dovetails in your support of the Hyde Amendment, which makes me a vocally unwilling contributor to that enterprise. Anna, see what's happening is both of us have belief systems and both of us want to impose our belief systems on the other. The only difference is I'm being consistent and you're not. Secondly, as I said before, every law that has ever been made, 90% of them have to do with restrictions on what you can do with your body.
Right.
Okay? I can't choke Sori to death and then in court say, hey, judge, I get to do what I want with my body. SubhanAllah, you don't even, they tell you how, do you realize that the government tells you how much pressure that your foot can push on a gas pedal? That's how much control they have over your body. They tell you how much pressure you can put on a gas pedal. So this silly idea that laws stop where my body starts is ridiculous. The vast majority of our laws have to do with restricting what we're allowed to do with our bodies, Anna. But is there any, when you listen to her talk, is there any indication at all that she sees that? Like when you saw clearly her support of the Hyde Amendment is absolutely hypocritical to this concept that people can freely do what they'd like. That this is Anna's monetary imposition, by the way, of her moral framework onto me and the millions of people who are horrified by the practice of abortion.
You know what's crazy is that if they found a way, this is going to be shocking, prepare yourself. If they found a way for somebody to be able to reach inside the womb of a woman and molest a child, people would say that is horrible and that should never happen. But killing the child is much worse. And and if they found a way to do that, I don't believe that people would say, well, yeah, of course you can do that. It's just a clump of cells. Like people would be horrified. But people have acclimated to the idea of killing a fetus and it's gone in this other place. It's absolutely horrific. And of course, if somebody found a way to molest children in the womb, I'm sure Anna would say they should not be allowed to do that, and she would want to foist her beliefs upon them. Like, obviously, if you see something as wrong, it's your duty to say something to protect the lives of these children.
Yeah. Again, I'm sure Anna hasn't read the abolitionist controversies during the antebellum period and the way that people were arguing and things of that nature. She's not familiar with any of that, obviously. We continue. And then she talks about the Constitution. Anna, or anybody that supports abortion, this is the thing that kills me. Anna, or anybody that supports abortion, please direct me to the amendment in the Constitution that allows for the killing of an innocent child due to their monetary inconvenience on the parent. Show me what article of the Constitution, where is that? Hell, give me an amendment, give me something. You know what they're going to show you? They're going to show you absolutely nothing, because the loosing of abortion in our country, the scourge of abortion in our country is created from what they call legal fiction, where the Supreme Court just gets to make up laws at random. So, for example, we've got qualified immunity, right? 1967, just out of nowhere, qualified immunity was invented. There's nothing in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights about qualified immunity for police officers, but that was created out of nowhere, and there was a political situation happening during that period in the American life that made that decision very obvious. What about the Dred Scott decision that said that African Americans were not completely human? That was a Supreme Court decision. So was Buck v. Bell. You know what the Buck v. Bell decision stated? Here we go. This is NPR. This is not a right-wing outlet. This is NPR. And here it is. The Supreme Court ruling that led to 70,000 forced sterilizations. That was because of Buck v. Bell. Look it up. The United States Supreme Court, it was an 8-1 vote. The only holdout, ironically, was a Roman Catholic. Everybody else, we're all modern, and we're saying, yeah, we should be able to we should be able to forcibly sterilize these people. And then the majority opinion, that's where he made the famous phrase, three generations of dunces is enough. You got enough of people like you, so we're going to forcibly sterilize you. So if you're going to use a Supreme Court decision, Anna, If you're gonna use that to leapfrog it into a constitutional amendment because of a Supreme Court decision, then you can't be against qualified immunity, which you are. You can't be against the Dred Scott decision, and you can't be against Buck v. Bell. Is this level of thought present in these reports? Of course not. Of course not. And this is the problem. This is the problem. Jeez. Good night. We continue.
Yeah, because they're un-American. So we'll get.
Okay, now here's Jake. So if you're against abortion, you're un-American. This is the same thing. Jimmy Dore is not a real leftist. Remember that?
Yeah.
In the last little meltdown video, Jimmy Dore wasn't a real leftist. So now we're un-American. I come from a family full of people who've made ridiculous sacrifices for this country. And it's literally still happening literally as we speak. And my entire family's pro-life. But here's Cenk saying we're un-American. Well, I'll be just as un-American as Jimmy Dore is not on the left. Cenk. What a weird world we're in.
Yeah.
We continue.
In a second. First, on religion. Look, guys, I don't believe in religion, and I know that really deeply offends people. Why do you care what if you're absolutely convinced of your religion, have at it, Hoss. You should just feel sorry for me that Beelzebub's gonna, toss me around on his pitchfork or whatever.
That is true, though. If you are a Christian, and that was actually pretty convicting for me, because Cenk obviously has not been on my list of people I'm going to pray for. But he's right. He's obviously lost. And whether or not you're a Christian, you could tell that they haven't had a very good 3 months, right? So I do think that, a lot of times when you're at war with somebody, you miss out on the basic duties.
Yeah.
And as a Christian, your most basic duty is to love your neighbor and love your enemy. And anybody that sets themselves up against innocent children is an enemy of mine for sure. But the Bible says to love your neighbor. And especially to love your enemy. So you got to give Cenk that. You got to give Cenk that.
But does Biden cares, right? It's so silly. Like, communion. If you get communion, you're going to go to heaven, I guess. And if you don't, you're going to be with Beelzebub and me.
Well, when you take communion in a Roman Catholic context, once again, you're ingesting the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. And it communicates divine grace and is the central ritual in the Roman Catholic Church. And to be fair to them, the Christian cult for at least the first 1,200 years of our faith. But why do you need to educate yourself in that? Look at that face. This is the face right here of modern atheism. It's just this, brainless, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm commenting on.
It is true that he's very uninformed about this topic.
Now, keep in mind, I said modern, the neo-atheists, the YouTube atheists. The people became atheists because they saw a Sam Harris video or something like that. That's what I'm talking about. Guys like Nietzsche and all the rest of these guys would never make arguments like this, ever. Nietzsche would make actually challenging arguments, which is why he has the respect of every Christian philosopher who's ever read him. You have to respect the man, because he devoted a bunch of time to learning the worldview that he was critiquing. Mm-hmm.
Well,
it's just like when Christians say, "Oh yeah, well if Darwinism's true, then how come we still have monkeys?"
I was literally gonna bring that up.
Didn't think of that, did you? It's that type of ignorance.
I grew up I came up in a Bible college and stuff, and they had topics that they would discuss. But they were discussed by Christians who researched other people's ideas, and so you thought you had all of like that. Maybe that would be an example. So the next time you talk to someone who's into evolution, and then you bring that up, you're like, well, how come there's no monkeys around?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, but that doesn't even make any sense with it. And you're like, no, it does make sense with it, because you keep wanting to keep going with that idea because that's all you have.
Yeah.
In your garden. So yeah, I mean, you can see that the same thing is true. Anybody that wants to educate themselves on something that they don't believe in, you have to go to the experts of that field and get information from them. I don't know where Cenk's getting his information, but
Cenk,
some better research.
but again, that's the difference, and that's Alec is he's a millennial and he's also an atheist, but he's not one of these people. Mm-hmm. Alec, you know what I'm talking about? It's these people haven't read anything, don't know anything, and are having this assumption that if you're religious, you're not intelligent. So then you end up saying dumb shit like this, right? And the dumb shit he's about to say later. But speaking of the separation of church and state, I gotta say, like, this is physics 101, ladies and gentlemen. Here is the establishment clause. Okay, now look, how do I say this? Let's just let Cenk say this, and then we'll deal with the establishment clause in a second. Go ahead, Cenk.
Really? Okay, where does Thor and Loki come out on this? Anyways, so the whole conversation.
There it is. So Jesus, an actual historical figure who even skeptics of the Christian story concede. Jesus is equivalent to Thor and Loki. Like, we have historical Loki conferences where scholars from multiple disciplines who are not believers in Odinism or anything like that. We've got historical Loki conferences where they talk about the existence of Loki and the seats and Laban of Loki and all the rest of it. Again, this is just terrible argumentation. We continue.
Totally patently absurd. Okay, but now let's move to the political end of it. So to Anna's point about cherry picking the Bible, well, look, you've heard me say this many times if you watch Sori Interest. Number one, right next to all of those provisions is the same provision on shellfish. So if you've ever eaten shrimp or lobster, you're going to hell. It actually is a cardinal sin. Abortion.
What?
Okay, so Cenk says in the complex of passages that deal with the subject of abortion, there are also passages that deal with the subject of shellfish. No, Cenk, that is completely wrong. The injunction against murder or unlawful killing is in the Decalogue. That's the 10 Commandments. And the purity laws, the cultic purity laws are found in Leviticus. So no, they're not found in the same complex of passages. Probably what he was trying to do was, that's an old argument about homosexuality. Mm-hmm. Because in Leviticus 18, you've got the list of the sexual mores that are out. Mm-hmm. And then the chapter previous to that, you had the shellfish and all the rest of it. That's where that argument is usually used. Yeah. It has nothing to do with abortion. But no. Cenk, and even that argument is horrible. Cenk, there is nowhere in the Hebrew Bible. Cenk, get ready for this. There is nowhere in the Hebrew Bible where unbelievers are ever judged for eating shellfish or lobster. Not one, not a single place. Go ahead and show us where God judges Gentile nations for that.
You lied.
Secondly, Cenk, all he said is that those foods were unclean. There was no death penalty penology for eating shellfish. Ridiculous, Cenk.
Ridiculous.
God almighty. You know, there is though in the Old Testament economy, there is a set of sins that God did judge Gentiles for, non-Jews for. You know what it is? This is Deuteronomy 31, I believe. They've been destroyed before you, and that you do not inquire about their gods, saying, how do these nations serve their gods, that I may also do the same? You shall worship Yahweh your God in that way, for every abominable thing that Yahweh hates, they have done for their gods. For they even burn their sons and their daughters in the fire to their gods. Cenk, you know what that means? That means that if a regular Canaanite person ate shellfish, God didn't touch him. Because God didn't hand that law down to humanity universally. He only handed that down to the Israelites. But when they took their own children and murdered their own children, God absolutely judged them, because that was a universal law. And that's the reason, Cenk, you never see a Gentile ever once get the death penalty for eating shellfish or any of the other things. Mm-hmm. They got the death penalty for universal law, or as the Roman Catholic Church would say, natural law. And wouldn't you know it, killing a child It's part of that natural law. Furthermore, when the New Testament wants to undo a law, it does it very explicitly. Here you go. You can see it here in Matthew chapter 7:19, where it says here, in saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean. So when the new covenant goes to amend an old covenant law, it says so explicitly in the New Testament. Killing children is still wrong in the New Testament era, Cenk. And that's the reason why when the Romans would abandon their babies, most of the time girls, and leave them to die in the wilderness or in the town square by exposure or to be eaten by the stray dogs, the Christian women would come at night, snatch up those babies, baptize them, and raise them up. Because abortion has always been against God's design as expressed through the church. We continue.
Is not at all mentioned in the Bible except one place I'm going to get to in a second. But eating shellfish is a cardinal sin. Now, why did they not say that? Because look, there's a great irony here. My heroes are religious leaders. Reverend Martin Luther King is the person I've looked up to my whole life. Currently, I think the top leader in the country is Reverend William Barber. So some religious leaders are the best people on earth. But unfortunately, the majority of religious leaders are total charlatans. And they've been lying to you your whole life.
There's 2 billion Christians on the planet, okay? So he listed MLK and somebody else. And then he said, those 2 are good, but the vast majority of them are charlatans. Cenk, how could you possibly know that? How could you possibly know that, Cenk? In a religion where a third of it is in hostile territories where they can't even go out in public, like China.
I know, yeah.
Go tell the Chinese Christians that the majority of their leaders are charlatans. Charlatans, Cenk, like the folks in Sudan that I know personally, who were ethnically cleansed like you would not believe because the Muslims came up from the north. Cenk doesn't even know anything about that. I mean, good night. I mean, he But again, this is just a complete surrender of all of his logical faculties here.
Yeah. Very emotional response.
And Christianity, like I said, there's 2 billion of us. We're on every continent on the planet, and this guy really believes that he's allowed to stereotype an entire group of people, the majority of which are in poor countries in the downtrodden. And he's saying all the leaders there, they're all just charlatans, while the atheists in China are chopping up Muslims left and right and Christians. We continue. Good Lord.
So they never tell you about the Red Lobster.
Now look. Abortion is prescribed for cheaters. Now you know where that came from. So we're gonna deal with it soon.
Stand by.
We continue.
And how you're all going to burn in hell because you like lobster, because that's inconvenient, okay?
No, it's because Jesus declared all foods clean, Cenk. And it's because that was an abomination specifically for the children of Israel, Cenk. And because no Gentile or non-Jew or non-Israelite nation was ever judged for those reasons, Cenk. Good Lord. We continue.
They want you to hate gay people. They want you to control women's bodies, so they'll make up parts and cherry pick, etc. Now, I'm not going to.
No, you made up the part where there was a threat of hellfire for eating shellfish, which there is none. So that's you making. Or when you said that Aaron Mate was wrapping himself tightly in a Russian blanket, that was also a lie. That was also something you made up. And then when Anna implied that Aaron was on the take from Bashar al-Assad, that was also a lie. Those are things that you guys made up with no evidence. Everything that I've said, I've showed you. And that is the difference, Cenk. We continue.
The whole thing again, but the Bible is pro-abortion. God is pro-abortion. Read the Bible, Numbers 5:11 through 31, and you will be shocked. So
you will be shocked. Oh no. I'm very embarrassed for him right now, actually.
Cenk.
He couldn't have read it, right? What's that website where people like go when they want to like get some Christian gotchas?
I've had, we had the unfortunate situation where, because I'm saying it's an unfortunate situation because I like the dude. And obviously, you know, things didn't go well for him. So he's going to bring up the adultery test. And what's his name? Jack Nicholson, right here. He says abortion is prescribed for cheaters. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to look at the text and see. Because, again, what these people are arguing is that we've had this in our Bible for 2,000 years, never knew about it. And then we needed people like Cenk and Ana to show us what it says. So here we go. Here's Numbers chapter 5. Unbelievable stuff. Okay, so I'm going to summarize 11 through 15. Long story short, we're in the ancient Near East, and the guy is starting to suspect that his wife is cheating on him. Now, we don't have DNA. We don't have Facebook. We don't have iPhones, right? So if I get this thing in my mind that my wife is cheating on me, there's no way for her to prove her innocence, right? And if you look at what happened in the ancient world, you're talking women got their hair torn out in public, they'd spit in their face in public, etc., 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 even if she was innocent. Which, of course, there was no way for her to prove her innocence as a woman in the ancient world. So God comes up with this test, and the test is, here we go. The priest shall bring her near and set her before Yahweh. The priest shall take holy water in an earthenware vessel and take some of the dust that is on the floor of the tabernacle and put it into water. Okay, so what we have here is water, some H2O, and some dirt. That's what we have. Just crumbled up rocks. Okay, that's what we have. Now, what happens is she's supposed to drink this concoction, and then the priest then pronounces a benediction or a contingent malediction where he says the following. The priest shall make her take an oath, saying, if no man has lain with you, and if you've not turned aside to uncleanness while you were under your husband's authority, be free from this water of bitterness that brings a curse. But if you have gone astray, though you are under your husband's authority, and if you've defiled yourself and some other man than your husband has lain with you, then let the priest make the woman take the oath of the curse and say to the woman, the Lord make you a curse and an oath among the people when the Lord makes your thigh fall away and your body swell. Now, the term right there, thigh fall away, is a euphemism for a woman's reproductive organ. Okay, I mean, that's the best I can do. So it's a curse. It's an infertility curse. So the girl drinks it. And now look, verse 27. When he has made her drink the water, then if she has defiled herself and has broken faith with her husband, the water that brings a curse shall enter into her and cause her bitter pain, and her womb shall swell, and her thigh shall fall away, and the woman shall become a curse among all her people. Verse 28. But if the woman has not defiled herself and is clean, then she shall be free and shall be able to conceive children. The issue in the adultery text in Numbers is not a miscarriage. The issue is infertility, because in the ancient Near East, being infertile was a fate worse than death, and you would be a marked woman because all the women of the village would say that God cursed you. Mm-hmm. Now, this is BibleHub.com. You can see there's about, 35 translations here. There is only one translation that uses the word miscarry. That's the NIV. All the other translations don't have the term miscarry because the Hebrew word for miscarry is not in that text. Okay, Cenk? So, and you can even see, even without looking at the original Hebrew, you can see in verse 28 what the concern is. The concern in verse 28 is her ability to conceive and have children. Verse 28 says it right there. If the woman has not defiled herself and is clean, then she shall be free and shall conceive children. It doesn't say the baby she's carrying will survive. There's no mention of a pregnancy because this lady is not pregnant. If she was pregnant, then the adultery test would have been really simple. If the baby lives, then it's hers. If it doesn't, then it wasn't. That's not how the test went, though. So, Cenk, no, that's not what the Bible says. The text does not describe an abortion. Furthermore, Cenk, the active agent in that text is Yahweh. It says, may Yahweh do X, Y, and Z to you. It doesn't say that the priest takes off the baby's arms, legs, shreds its torso, crushes its skull till a white substance exits the birth canal, which was the baby's brains. I just described the second most popular form of abortion in the United States of America, according to the Mayo Clinic. Okay? So let's just be real here. If you're going to embrace abortion, that's fine. Just don't try to get God involved in that nonsense. Okay? We continue.
The reason that you
Meghan
can know
McCain decided
go
to
ahead.
win.
that, well, he said, how do I know your interpretation is correct? Why should I trust, basically, why should I trust yours over it? Cenk didn't even bring it up. He just talked about it. Then actually showed you where it's from, where to find it, and we talked about the Hebrew, which it's originally written in. So there's a lot more research.
And I
behind
also
the
showed
scenes
you
stuff.
the 27 other translations, none of which use that term.
Right. But what did Cenk show you?
But again, I gave you something you could look at. Right? So you can do what you want. You can do what you want with the information, but at least I gave you the information. But Cenk didn't give us the information. He just said it, and I don't know. Maybe he assumes that his audience are not going to. Does he just assume that they're not very intelligent? I think TYT audience members are intelligent, or does he just assume because it's religion, people aren't going to take the time to actually look at it?
Probably.
Which is probably more in line, right, with
Yeah.
Cenk's personality or whatever you want to say. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Oh, it looks like that Ben is against birth control. Look at that. Did you see his comment?
By the way, guys, when these guys talk about the Establishment Clause, I want to read you something. That religion or the duty to which we owe our Creator and the manner of discharging it can be directed only by reason and conviction, not by force or violence, and therefore all men are equally entitled to the free exercise of religion according to the dictates of conscience, and that it is the mutual duty of all to practice Christian forbearance, love, and charity towards each other. No man shall be compelled to frequent or support any religious worship place or ministry whatsoever, nor shall be enforced, restrained, molested, or burdened in his body or goods, nor shall otherwise suffer on account of his religious opinions or belief, but all men shall be free to profess and by argument to maintain their opinions in matters of religion, and the same shall in no wise diminish, enlarge, or affect their civil capacities, and the General Assembly not prescribe any religious tests whatever, or confer any peculiar privileges or advantages, etc., etc., etc. That is the Virginia Constitution, 2021.
Wow.
This idea that, and a lot of historians believe, and I do too, that the Establishment Clause that we actually have in our Constitution was simply a Reader's Digest version of the Constitution of Virginia.
Wow.
Because the issue here, see what happens is there's this sort of idea called presentism, which is basically you look at issues from the past with modern lenses. Mm-hmm. The issue for the first Americans was not secularism versus Christianity. The issue was the doctrine of freedom of conscience, namely Protestantism versus the Church of England versus the Catholic Church. The settlers, the new Americans, had just witnessed what happens when the Catholic Church had full sway over the civil government, and they saw a similar thing happen when the Church of England melded with the monarchy. So they said, when we get a new place, and what that does is it ends freedom of conscience. This whole idea that you have the freedom of speech and the freedom to believe what you want is a new idea. As I said in the Council of Trent, the Catholic Church explicitly anathematized the doctrine of freedom of conscience. They're saying, no, you're not free to believe what you want. You're only free to believe the truth. And we're the sole arbiters of said truth. They sound like Facebook now. Okay, so that was the issue. So they were never trying to eliminate religion from the public square. What they were trying to do was make sure that we didn't have a Church of America. But that does not mean then that that the bishops of America and the See of Peter can't say, you supporting the wanton killing of innocent children who are defenseless is not in line with Roman Catholic teaching. This is actually a mortal sin, and your priest should never have been giving you the elements. Understanding that. So if Cenk really wanted to educate his audience, he'd say, listen, I know a lot of you are triggered anytime something religious happens, but here is the Constitution of Virginia. Good night. We continue.
But eating shellfish is a cardinal sin. Now, why do they not say that? Because look, there's a great irony here. My heroes are...
This is just a lie.
Are religious leaders are the best people on earth.
We are.
But unfortunately, the majority of religious leaders are total charlatans. And they've been lying to you your whole life.
And Cenk
so
is
they
telling
never tell you about the Red Lobster Amendment and how you're all gonna burn in hell because you like lobster, because that's inconvenient, okay? But they want you to hate gay people, they want you to control women's bodies, so they'll make up parts and cherry pick, etc. Now, I'm not gonna get into the whole thing again.
He is right, though. There's a lot of religious people that hate gay people. That's just a fact. You can't deny that and be an honest person. He's right about that.
The Bible is pro-abortion. God is pro-abortion.
Hey, we just saw that wasn't true. As a matter of fact, the adultery test in Numbers 5 should be a favorite among atheists, because every atheist knows that there's no God. So since there's no God, when the water and the dirt mix up, nothing is going to happen to that woman. Right? Because there's no God to make anything magical happen. You know that dirt and water doesn't do anything. So that creates a heuristic in which the woman will always win, even if she's guilty, in your worldview. That as an atheist should be looked upon as one of the most elegant ways of protecting women, by using the superstition of these idiot nomad, whatever. Right?
Yep.
We continue.
The Bible, Numbers 5:11 through 31, and you will be shocked. So they're lying to you about every part of it. But the most important part is the one that Ana mentions, which is, why do I care what your religious opinion is if you're a political leader? This is not a theocratic country. This is not Saudi Arabia. This is not Iran. This is not the Vatican, okay? Who cares who?
Right, it's not the Vatican. So if the Vatican says something, Jake, correct, who cares? The problem is, you've just done an entire segment based on something that the Vatican said. So you care, obviously. Unbelievable.
Communion and who doesn't. That's totally and utterly irrelevant. If Meghan McCain thinks that her religious views, by the way, totally wrong, 100% factually incorrect religious views.
Now, Cenk doesn't tell us which religious views are totally factually incorrect, but I hope, Cenk,
facts aren't important to him, obviously.
I hope, Cenk, that you're not referring to the fact that abortion is absolutely the wanton killing of an innocent human child. That's not something that's debatable at all. That's not something that any embryologist will argue you on. So I don't know what Cenk is exactly talking about here when he says, she's got some factually incorrect position. But Cenk, no, she doesn't. It's a settled fact that we're killing babies in abortion. So I don't know what you mean, buddy.
Guide my life and your life. She's a joke, but honestly, a lot of people in politics and media are a joke. They all have this conversation. What does the Bible say? Sure. What do Christians think? Well, how about the rest of us? How about Jews, Muslims, atheists, Hindus, Buddhists? Why are we obsessed with what do the Christians think? It is.
I mean, you're shooting the segment, Cenk. There's been a lot of fatwa about what's been going on over at Gaza. You could have done a couple shows on that. You could do some shows on one of my favorite sheikhs who just recently said that Al Yahud were the descendants of dogs and monkeys. You could do a segment on that. For some reason you won't do it. That's because Christians won't show up to your shop and burn it down for blaspheming our prophet. Cenk, shout out to Muslimin.
Not remotely a Christian country, and if you think it is, you've never read the Constitution.
If you think that this is even remotely, if you think that there is even a remote influence of religion in America, you've never read the Constitution. Or the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. You remember you know the thing. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created. Oh, we gotta delete created, because that implies creator.
Right.
Created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights given to them by their creator, among which are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
I wonder what they were talking about.
My man, literally the justification for war in the minds of the first settlers was that they were created in the image of God and that everybody was equal. And so because of that, King George did not have the right to do what he did to them.
Anna, get your boy.
As Justin Lee says, our money literally says in God we trust. Correct. We open up the Congress with prayer, and the Virginia Constitution says that it is our Christian duty to be good American citizens and that we owe our Creator our obedience. That's the Virginia Constitution. Good night. What is going on? As Perkinaw says, Madison and Jefferson fully expected the citizens of the U.S. to have a bright, vibrant religious life wherein Christian ethics and virtues would be the cornerstone of a newfound republic. Cenk remains ignorant. Of course, we know, and Perkinaw would agree, of course there were deists mixed in with the founding fathers. Of course. We're not saying that, well, there are Christians that have said that all the founding fathers were like deeply religious Christians and blah, 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 blah. But we know that that's not true. But we also know that they were not trying to set up some secularist utopia where every mention of God got a 7-minute video. And the irony of this whole thing is, I don't even think Megyn mentioned God. She simply said she was against abortion. Newsflash, Cenk and other leftists. There are many non-religious people who are now opening up to the fact that it's a bad idea to kill innocent children. There's pro-life feminists, pro-life LGBT, pro-life atheists, Albany Rose, who would absolutely destroy anybody in a debate on this topic. I've seen her do it.
Yep.
So, you know, this is one of the reasons I am certain that abortion is going to fall in our lifetime. This is the best these folks can do. And meanwhile, they did a show last month about how draconian, you know, the Texas is, you know, there's a couple states that are now effectively banning abortion, which is why I said, you know, I don't need to rely on the Supreme Court to end abortion in America. In very much the same way, Buck v. Bell has never been overturned. Do you know that technically on a legal level, the state can still forcefully sterilize you? But Buck v. Bell has never been overthrown.
That's crazy.
But come on, man. Come on, Cenk. Let's do some real rigorous thought work here, Cenk. If you're saying that a Supreme Court decision is equivalent to a constitutional amendment, you're saying that those are the same thing, that means then that the government is completely okay to continue to forcibly sterilize people. It was 70,000 folks, Cenk, the majority of which were brown people. So, should we let that happen too? Or should we look at Buck v. Bell and say, holy shit, that is completely against our values, and do the right thing? We continue.
The Constitution clearly says we shall not establish a religion. Are you dumb? Can you not read? Are you illiterate?
We know that, Cenk. And in the context of freedom of conscience, we agree. But as we've demonstrated via the Virginia Constitution, the dollar bill, National Day of Prayer, etc., why hasn't the ACLU, Cenk, in Virginia? I'm certain, you know, I was talking to an ACLU lawyer a couple weeks ago because we're working on something here. Cenk, why hasn't the ACLU branch in Virginia sued the state to change the verbiage on their constitution, which talks about their Christian duty to their creator? Do you know why? Because they would lose. Do you know why? Because the Establishment Clause is about Congress establishing a state church. Ah, my goodness gracious. For all of the folks who have not seen it yet. And look, my only thing about this thing is like he talks with so much authority.
I know.
I do not believe that he's purposely lying to these people. He just has no clue what he's talking about. There it is again. Here it is. The Bill of Rights of Virginia. Article 1, Section 16. Free exercise of religion, no establishment of religion. That religion or the duty to which we owe our Creator in the manner in discharging it can be directed only by reason and conviction, not by force or violence. Therefore, all men are equally entitled to the free exercise of religion, etc., etc., etc. And it talks about our duty specifically as Christians. Why hasn't the ACLU sued to change that language, Cenk?
This is a secular country. It's in the founding document. If you love the Constitution, you would never care what anybody thinks about religion when it comes to politics.
Oh, if you love the Constitution, you will never care what a leader thinks in regard to that. Is that what he just said? Let me read some quotes to you, Sori, and you tell me who you think are saying them. That I am not a member of any Christian church is true, but I have never denied the truth of the scriptures, that I have never spoken with intentional disrespect of religion in general or any denomination of Christians in particular. Here's another quote. Such a man the times have demanded, and such in the providence of God was given to us, but he is gone. Let us strive to deserve, as far as mortals may, the continued care of divine providence, trusting that in future national emergencies, he will not fail to provide us the instruments of safety and security, end quote. You know who that was? Guess who that was? Abraham Lincoln.
I was going to guess Lincoln. I should have just gone with it.
Abraham Lincoln, who connected the troubles of the Civil War with God's judgment on America.
Look at that.
I'm glad that there were a few noble Northmen over there who, because of the scripture and the doctrine of the image of God, fought like mad to free a bunch of people who, by the way, the scientists were saying were a lower strand of human being.
Yeah.
It's called scientific racism. Look it up. And then look up what would happen if we didn't win the Civil War, which is why you still need critical race theory, but that's a separate discussion.
If you say that we should be guided by your religion, you hate this country, you're un-American, just own up to it. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show.
So Martin Luther King hated this country because Martin Luther King never used a religious argument for the right of black people in America. Cenk, it was religion itself that was a springboard for all of MLK's argumentation. Mm-hmm. Because you cannot root equal rights for all people in secularism, Cenk. That's impossible. So I guess Martin Luther King hates America. Was it Jimmy Dore is not really a leftist. And Cenk and Ana are the only sources of truth, justice, and the American way. Good night. Oh my goodness. I don't know.
Yikes.
I don't know what to say. Now I have my good friend Cattle Murder here. Cattle Murder, come on. Let's go. He says typical arguments by Vin. Cattle Murder, come on. I'll get you on the show. You'll be on Middle America. People can see that we do debates
yes, you
here.
can challenge him with some different thoughts.
You can come on and if you
get him off his typical arguments.
Typical arguments by Vin, he says. So here you go, Cattle Murder. Jump on to the show, please.
I'm always so hopeful.
It's not going to happen. Okay, we know that's not going to happen. All right.
We need a worthy opponent.
Abortion is completely indefensible, and that's one of the reasons why you're not going to get a lot of debate partners on it. If you want to see the abortion video debate we actually did, the one abortion video debate where a person actually agreed, we'll put it right there, and you can see how that fella did. But obviously abortion is completely indefensible. We also did, I'm not going to name the person, but we did an abortion debate where the person basically said, look, these kids are going to be a burden on society, so we got to get rid of them. Literally said that. I can give you that video too if you want it. Send me an email, vinandsori@gmail.com. I'm not going to post that video on the channel
Which
because
goes back to
I'm not trying to embarrass my friends.
God talking about they offered up their babies to be burned in the fires toward their gods.
Correct.
People sacrifice their kids for their careers, for their schooling, for their futures, for their money.
We also know that a bunch of these abortions happen because men who pretend that they're white knighting in reality just want sex without consequence and pressure their girlfriends and wives to kill their own children because of the monetary inconvenience and the type of pressure that a lot of young women are under because many right-wing folks can't find it within their pockets to shell out a few extra dollars for these ladies to give them a fighting chance.
Yep.
We also know that's true, and we also have to own that as a primary reason that abortion continues. But having said that, the only thing left to do, dear listener, is love your neighbor.
Take care of each other.
Even if you're little. Remember, Anna,
Take care of the tinies.
a person's a person, no matter how small. Middle America.